Welcome everyone, welcome to the fourth episode on the mindset shift. In this episode I'm going to talk about very specific thing that when it comes to mindset no one talks about, and this is triggers and glimmers, and they're not what you think they are. You may not even know what glimmer is, so I'm going to talk about triggers. What is triggering for you, right? And that it's not very obvious. So in the previous episode, maybe you didn't watch it, it doesn't matter, but you know, when people are trying to shift their mindset and ignore their body, they're trying to bypass their nervous system. It's not going to work. When you're trying to do something new, make a change, introduce a new habit or stop a habit, and you run into the same wall every time, and you are just not able to force yourself for some reason to do something new or stop something you don't want to be doing, or you know, be more productive or whatever, watch less stuff on Netflix, whatever you're trying to do, and for whatever reason you're struggling with that, it's usually because you are trying to ignore how your nervous system was programmed, right? I'm going to be talking about this until the day I die because I'm a therapist. I worked only on the mind level for quite a long time, and then I discovered the nervous system and the work of the polyvagal theory, and you know, I started working with this framework, and this is where everything shifted. Because what we seem to assume, and this is what is being talked about when it comes to mindset and mental health, it's all mental, it's all in your mind, it's, you know, it's all about rewiring your brain. Well, it is, but that's not the full story. So if you still don't know why you can't do or not do, you can't execute on your decisions, basically, right? Emotionally, psychologically, physically, or whatever. Keep listening, because that will give you a lot of answers. And if you've come to the point of frustration and being fed up, congratulations, because this is exactly when you make a change and when you make a commitment to yourself. And as I said in the previous episode, you can't change your thinking with your thinking. You just cannot do that. That's why a lot of people struggle when it comes to mental health, because they think, oh, I'm just going to control or overcome my anxiety with my thoughts. I'm just going to be willing to overcome my anxiety, or I'm just going to think my way out of depression. Listen, your nervous system is much smarter than you. And the way it was programmed, like we talked about in the previous episode, it absolutely dominates the way you function. It's your human operational system, is my operational system, so MOS, I call it for short, right? So my operational system works in a way that it had been programmed, and its main thing is to keep you surviving. And the programming from your primal tribe, which is your family, absolutely takes over. And you can think, oh, you know, I want more money, or I want this job or that job. If, for example, in your family, the progress and growing and evolving is not something that is being valued, you're going to self-sabotage yourself. I talked about it in the last episode. I'm just recapping a little bit because that's part 4 of the series on the mindset, right? So when you actually talking about mindset, what you need to shift in terms of one of the settings of the mind is the fact that it's not only about the mindset, because you cannot just manipulate and maneuver within your mind, ignoring or bypassing the experience of your nervous system, which is like your higher intelligence, your wisdom. So whatever your body thinks it's safe, you're going to keep repeating that. And safe doesn't always mean good for you or healthy for you or not something you want. So keep listening, because that will give you a lot of answers. And if you are listening to this, and if you're searching, and if you're staying curious, that's the most important thing about yourself, because that's the way to evolve. You know, your self-awareness is your superpower. So if you're lacking in that department, congratulations, because we're just going to unravel some stuff that you may not be aware of. I'm a therapist. I've done it a lot of times with people. I have helped a lot of people shift their understanding about themselves, and I've also done it myself. I was a therapist and I lived in a survival mode without even knowing it. I thought this is my personality, and I was very wrong about that. So when I think about it, you know, I'm thinking, I went to all these schools, I did all this training, and I was still unaware of this. I was well into my training when I found out about nervous system and how it governs all our behaviors and what we do and what we can't do and how we self-sabotage. That was like a light bulb moment for me. So I'm just sharing it, and I have a deep desire and deep belief that this is a very transformative knowledge that everyone should have, and it should be available for everyone. So there you go. So in the last episode, we've discussed how you can't maneuver within your mind with your thoughts, because it's your nervous system whose basic need, the first need, is to survive, and you're doing that by belonging. So without aligning and changing and letting go and really focusing on what it means for you, for your nervous system to feel safe, you can't change anything on the mind level. You're going to go back to your old ways. You're going to run into the same wall, and the same problems will resurface, and it's going to leave you frustrated, and you're going to be stuck. You're going to be running on a loop, right? The roundabout syndrome, as I call it. So the nervous system is your human operational system, is your higher intelligence, is your wisdom. And the nervous system has its needs. So your body has its needs. You have no problem knowing what your body needs when it comes to your physiology. You need to go to the toilet, you need to eat, you need to drink, whatever. If you don't do it, it kind of gets difficult. So, or impossible to even, it hijacks you. So the needs, the unconscious needs of your nervous system hijack you. You can't function if you don't do what your nervous system needs to be doing. And it governs all your functions. It really controls every single life function within you. You have no idea what your heart is doing, your liver is doing, but yet your nervous system is making all these decisions for you. And here you are thinking that you're the boss of your life. Well, you're not until you get to know your nervous system, until you know how it operates and what really happens there and why. So I'm going to be very generic. I have to be, because I don't know you and you don't know yourself. So we're going to be focusing on what is triggering for your nervous system and what are the glimmers. So what I mean by triggers and glimmers. So as I keep talking about, we've got 3 responses of the nervous system depending on what goes on around you, right? So you've got your environment, you are in a particular environment, and it's obviously about growing up, but we're just going to talk about sort of the current moment, not to overcomplicate things. So what we have here is, there is you walking around in your daily life. It's by definition, by design, it's an evolutionary feature. So you don't have a clue what's going on. You don't. You may accept that at this point, because if you think you're in charge of yourself, don't watch this video, honestly. But if you feel that you're not in charge of yourself and you don't have autonomy over yourself, keep watching, because I'll give you a lot of answers. So your nervous system takes everything in unconsciously, so outside of your awareness. So neuroception is a perception of the nervous system, is the ability of the nervous system to scan your environment, and the only question that your nervous system is trying to answer is, am I safe, am I not safe? Obviously, that's an extension of a survival need. You have survived up until now, and decisions you have made in your life, really, you haven't made them, they have been made for you, if you think about it. And very often people say, I don't know why I did that. Well, let me explain. So you've got the neuroception, and so the ability of your nervous system to perceive and to scan your environment for danger and threats to your survival. And your safety is absolutely crucial. Your nervous system learns very quickly when you're a child what it means to be safe and what it means not to be safe, what it means to belong and what it means to be kicked out of the tribe, which is your family, which are the people who are looking after you. So it sort of builds up a program, right? It builds up a program that it's locked in your unconscious mind, which is your body, whereby knows what needs to be repeated. So it really, the principle here is familiarity. What needs to be repeated in order for you to repeat for you the success of survival. And that's the core of it here, right? So you've got things that your nervous system takes in and decides, is this a trigger, is this a glimmer, right? And the most important thing for your nervous system is this familiar? So it will shut off, you will ignore everything on the sort of brain level and the mind level. You will ignore everything that is not relevant to your perception of the world, to your state. And your nervous system can respond in three ways. Green state, I call it, which is rest, digest, regenerate, safe and social, when you can be authentic and relaxed. Sadly, not a lot of people know this state, but some people live there. Another state is mobilization of energy, which I call the red state, when you have behavioral responses, behaviors that are driven by excess of energy in the system. So fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. So you've got excess of energy because you respond to stress or threat or danger by taking action. And then you've got a third state, which I call grey state, where you have no energy at all in your system, or very minimal amount of energy, very minimal adrenaline in your system, very minimal inner resources are just collapsing. It's the shutdown response. So you deal with stress and you deal with danger, your nervous system does, by not taking action like in red, but by no action, right? By being passive and disappearing into the background, and that's depression for you. So there are only 3 states. They're not 17 or 48. So that's a very good news because it's very simple. And again, I think it's a scandal that people don't learn that at school. So in the red state, you've got all the forms of anxiety. In the grey state, you've got all the forms of depression. So depending on your proclivity, temperament, history, genetics, then you have different forms of it, right? So triggers are the things that cause your nervous system to go into one of the chosen survival states. And glimmers are things that calm you down and bring you closer to the green state, right? Because, people talk about, oh, I got so triggered, right? These are things you notice. But generally, your nervous system operates on the principle outside of your awareness. So you don't know what's going on. So I'm going to talk generally about what people experience, what the nervous system likes in general. And then I will slightly deviate from being generic and I'll try to help you individually. But what I mean by this, okay, so the way we live in today's world, obviously you will agree with me when we say like people are very anxious today or they're depressed. So there aren't many people walking around us who are happy, fulfilled, authentic. Everyone lives in survival, almost everyone. And why is that? Why is it that so many people, young people, children, we're starting to talk about children having anxiety attacks, right? This is a serious mental health crisis that we are just watching unravel in front of our eyes. So I just want you to stop for a moment and think about your experience, everyday experience, from the perspective of your nervous system. What are you being exposed to on a daily basis? What are you doing to yourself on a daily basis? So stuff you can control. So think about the stuff you watch. And even for your nervous system, like it's excess. We are so driven today to just experience after experience after experience. We watch a lot of stuff, we listen to a lot of stuff. Like, no wonder your nervous system gets into anxiety or into depression, because it's just being overwhelmed constantly, right? Just the excess, just the intensity. So with that intensity, then you overstimulated, then you overworked, right? And then what is the choice for your nervous system? It either goes into overdrive or underdrive. There's no other option. We do it to ourselves. Like a lot of what we do today, we think, oh, it doesn't matter. I've just watched this thing. I've just watched a really good movie last night and I didn't go to bed until 1. Right. So for your brain, for your nervous system, it doesn't really matter whether someone was killed on the screen or in real life. I may be over dramatizing a little bit. Think about it. You're feeding yourself all this shit all day long. Drama, conflict, war, more drama and more drama. You're being desensitized, first of all. So you need more and more of it to even feel something. Another thing is entertainment. We live in a world where we're being distracted by, you need to be entertained. Like, you need to watch this, you need to watch this, right? Actually, do you feel entertained? When you're watching something, it's not like doing something. Because if you went out and actually lived through a fraction of experiences you watch, you would be exhausted. Because your nervous system is not designed to be active even for 16 hours a day or even 12. Like, that's why people are shattered and exhausted. And it just overwhelms your nervous system. Your nervous system doesn't have a choice but to go into shutdown. So, look, you experience mini depression every day. You experience like your nervous system goes, no, I can't take it anymore. Another thing is over complexity of the environment, of the narrative. You keep listening to shit, books, podcasts, stuff that really doesn't move a needle. Like, it's pointless and meaningless. And as soon as you take a certain amount of information in a day, and information is not knowledge and knowledge is not wisdom, remember that. As soon as you take a certain amount of information a day, your brain will shut off. You're not a child. Your brain is not like a sponge. right? It will take a certain amount of information, and that's obviously a capacity issue here. So people have different capacity, but your capacity is being compromised all the time because you just consume. You just consume mentally, emotionally, psychologically. So that's triggers. It's triggering your nervous system because to go into survival, to go into anxiety, and to go into depression. And I'm not even talking about chemical triggers, which is alcohol, vaping, nicotine, all the other stuff, right? And people talk about dopamine. Yeah, that's part of the story again, right? If you, for example, lived peacefully, and didn't expose yourself to this amount of shit, you wouldn't have a problem with scrolling through an hour in the evening. That wouldn't be an issue. You wouldn't need dopamine detox. The thing is that we put ourselves through constant treadmill of highs throughout the day, of some kind of consumption, whether physical, emotional, psychological, or mental, right? We just consume. And obviously, in the past, that wasn't possible. In the past, in order for you to read something, to consume information, you had to either read something or be somewhere where stuff was talked about, like church or university or school. And you would go home and decompress all of that and cook and clean and play with your children and whatever. Now it's not possible, right? So, because it's always there. So, think about the triggers you can control. You cannot expect your nervous system not to be anxious if you are watching stressful shit or watching the news or getting involved in the drama of the war or politics. And if you are entangling yourself on the mind level and you're feeding yourself this negativity, this fear, this conflict, confrontation, you get yourself worked up, amped up, or whatever the expression may be. You get yourself anxious. We get ourselves anxious a lot of the time. Sometimes I sit down and I think like, why am I anxious? Right. Well, maybe because I have scrolled. Even though I try to control what I watch, it's impossible. You don't get to decide what you watch. It's being thrown at you, right? So then I need like 15 minutes from watching something for 40 minutes, let's say. Everything you consume and you are being exposed to impacts you, even if you think, oh, that doesn't bother me. Yes, it does. If I was wrong, the advertising industry wouldn't exist, because in 2 minutes you can be subliminally manipulated to go and buy something without having to spend a minute on deciding, a second on deciding. You're being manipulated for stress. So just think about that. We are being primed for stress because when you're in green, right, when you rest, digest, regenerate, safe and social, you don't need to soothe your nervous system. You don't need to go on shopping therapy. You don't need to drink. You don't need to smoke. You don't need to buy. You don't need to consume, right? You are only consuming when you're in survival. Then you need to, feel something, or right. So you subscribe to something. You feel like, right, I'm just going to do something. I just need to help myself, because when you're in survival, your nervous system is trying to soothe itself. In the red mode, it's trying to bring the energy down. So it's either food, drink, drama, gossip, watching something, or sex, dating, but you name it. Like, there's a plethora of choices how to soothe yourself. It works in the moment. It's like boom, right? It doesn't matter that you've decided 3 days ago that you're not going to eat cake from Monday to Friday, or you're not going to watch porn. No, when you stress, all your decisions go out of the window. In depression, when you are numb and you're going into not feeling anything, you feel helpless and hopeless and in despair, you're going to somehow hurt yourself by drinking, smoking, feeling something. You will want to feel something. So then again, you're a perfect customer, you're a perfect consumer because you're desperate. So do not underestimate the power of these things. Be mindful of what is triggering you into survival states. And then your mental health is out of the window, right? So in the past, when you had an hour of therapy, you could really think about it, you went home, and that hour really had an impact. In today's world, you can watch something that soothes you, teaches you something. I don't know, you watch a podcast with a neuroscientist and then you think, right, oh, that makes sense, blah, blah. And then the next minute you're gone because you're being literally sucked into this machine of keeping you in survival, right? So it's really important for you to sit behind the wheel of your attention, of where you're paying attention, because that's why it's called paying attention, because you pay with your attention and you also pay for not paying attention. You pay for being in survival mode because it costs you. It costs you to soothe, it costs you to eat, drink, smoke, it costs you your health, it costs you your dependency, and then you sort of hook onto stuff and things like this. So it's really important for you to actually understand how you're being triggered into survival modes, how you're being triggered into anxiety and depression. And medication can take the edge off, and of course there's place for medication, as I always say. But without your decision to actually start being aware, because awareness means autonomy, and being autonomous over your choices that you make for yourself, nothing is going to happen. Because if you even do a breathing session for 45 minutes and then go online and then you trigger your nervous system again to go into anxiety, you will going to have a panic attack at some point, right? So it is about tweaking your environment and what you're being exposed to. In depression is the same thing, right? You will be trying to affirm this, and there's a, your survival state becomes your identity and the way you look at the world. So what that means is that you will ignore. Your brain has confirmation bias and default mode network and different other sort of systems for you to filter out stuff that is not relevant to how you feel. So when you feel stressed in the red mode, you will be resonating with things that somehow modify this stress or confirm or unfirm this stress. When you're in the grey mode, in depression, again, same thing. You will resonate with things and you will respond with things that will affirm your despair, sadness, hopelessness and helplessness and lack of motivation, and you'll just watch the same things and etc. So you will affirm this reality, you will, right? So again, but that makes you a patient for life, right? A customer for life. And it could be gambling. When you feel really low, you want to make yourself feel better, right? When you feel really depressed, you want to not feel this, even for half an hour. So you will do something. So it makes you desperate. Survival states make you desperate. Glimmers, on the other side, are the things which bring you a sense of peace and bring you into the state, closer to the state of rest, digest, regenerate. And again, you need to know what they are specifically. because they're very generic, as the same with triggers. They're very generic, so lack of predictability, fast-paced environments, excess, complexity, these are all triggers for your nervous system. So the flip side of this is glimmers, right? What is calming for our nervous system is simplicity, predictability, clarity, right? That's why the best glimmer is being in nature, because this is where our nervous system calms down, and this is where grounding comes in, or some rhythmic movement. Glimmer is a piece of information from your environment, from your mind, that sends an information, sends a message to your nervous system, I am safe. So anything with rhythm, predictable rhythm, so walking, rocking, grounding of any kind, so laying on the ground, putting your bare feet on the soil, swimming, like movement is really important, because this is where your body, after 15 minutes, your body thinks, right, this is what we're doing, I'm safe. Being in nature, listening to the birds, listening to the wind, all things which make your nervous system calm down, sort of decompress and calm your nervous system down. So again, think about it. How can you, when you're working on the mindset, mindset about money, mindset about this, mindset about relationships, mindset about love, when people say, it's all about the mindset. It is. But if your nervous system is in survival, you cannot, and you don't know why it's there, and how to calm it down, and how to get it out of survival and close to rest, digest, regenerate, because your body takes over, right? So you can't expect to have any result, and there will be a lot of force applied. So when you're trying to do something new or stop something that doesn't serve you anymore, right? But it had a calming effect, because yes, all the soothing stuff works, like overeating, especially carbs, alcohol, gambling, like all these addictive things, they really calm your nervous system for 15 minutes, but they do. And then you're trying to stop it without addressing your state, you're not going to get really far. And if you do, you're going to crash, because if you unconsciously go into survival state, you're going to go back to your old ways. You're going to go back. There's no other way. I mean, if you can introduce me to someone who's been able to do it, bypassing the body without understanding how the nervous system operates. And mind you, triggers are very unique. So what can be triggering for me can be calming for you. Examples. If you grew up in chaos, but it was a negative chaos, so you didn't have any predictability, you didn't know what is going on, chaos will trigger you, right? If you grew up in chaos, but you felt loved, embraced, and it was like a positive, you will feel great in chaos. Your nervous system will be like, yeah, that's my environment. If you grew up in an environment, you as a child, where one of your parents was someone who was really strict, and it was all about the discipline, even the word, if they use that word to discipline you, it will be triggering for you, right? And because it's all about finding your balance. So this is really, really unique to you. So get really specific over what is your main trigger, right? Another thing was overcommitting, over socializing. People think, yeah, I've got lots of friends and I go out 3 times a week to a restaurant. Well, you think you're that successful, that's what success means, and you've got lots of friends. But for your nervous system, it's overwhelming, because your nervous system needs sleep, a routine, with occasional fun, occasional, not 3 times a week, nutrition, sunlight, and rhythm, according to nature, what's going on around you, right? And it's very specific to where you live, and it's very specific to how you live, how much you work, where you work, what is your job, do you like your job, you don't like your job. So it is really important to know your triggers and your glimmers. I talk about it in the course, Mechanics of Mental Health, where you learn and you establish your way of working with yourself. So it's very specific, and I teach you about the nervous system, and I teach you about the mind, and I teach you about how the mind is an extension of the body. Because what people seem to be doing is like, oh, I want to stop overthinking. Well, if your body is anxious, because anxiety is a full physiological experience, that's why people end up in A&E, then you won't be able to stop overthinking. But when you address the state first, and when you send a message to your body that, yeah, I'm peaceful and calm, you can relax, then overthinking dissolves. The anxiety dissolves, right? The same way with depression, right? If you know, okay, I was depressed, I am depressed because I never processed the fact that my granddad died when I was 14 because I didn't know how to. And since then, I went into this shutdown, and I go into the cycle of that on a regular basis. But then you process this grief, for example, because depression very often is unexpressed grief. And then you do that, then you won't have to do all these other things, and you will have the energy because your nervous system will learn that you are safe and you can connect, and the crisis is over, right? This is an invitation to buy my course. Thank you very much for this episode, and hit the subscribe button if you like the stuff I talk about and the way I talk about mental health and human experience in general. And let me know what you think in the comments. What did you think about this episode? And maybe, I'm happy to answer any question, and maybe there is something that you want me to talk about. Yeah, I'm happy to collaborate with you on that. If you have any questions, please do send them over, and I'll see you in the next episode. Thank you very much.